true revenge westerns of the 70s and beyond were raw, ugly, and dangerously real. Actors fired real guns on set, budgets collapsed, directors disappeared, and some productions nearly ended in violence themselves. Did you know Roy Colt and Winchester Jack was actually mocked by critics for being too immoral? These movies broke rules no studio would dare today. Here are 10 lost revenge westerns so wild you won't believe they exist. And the last one is the rarest of them all. Let's kick things off with number 10, The Return of Sabata. Lee Van Cleef was already a spaghetti western icon, thanks to For a Few Dollars More in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But when he stepped back into Sabata's black hat, audiences knew they were in for something more ruthless. The Return of Sabata, directed by Gianfranco Parolini, leaned into the bizarre with deadly trick shots, hidden weapons, and a body count that piles up almost cartoonishly. What makes this film fascinating isn't just Van Cleef's cold stare. It's how the movie reflects Italy's Western boom of the 1970s. By then, over 600 spaghetti westerns had been produced in less than a decade, and filmmakers competed by making their stories wilder and bloodier. Sabata's elaborate gun gadgets, derringer boots, rifle tricks, exploding coins, mirror the period's obsession with spectacle over realism. And here's the kicker. Van Cleef actually performed many of his own gun-spinning stunts, despite being nearly 50. That intensity carried over into the next even darker story. Moving forward to number 9, God's Gun.
I don't think you heard me. I said this is a respectable place.
Yes, ma'am, I hear you.
God's Gun looks like a dream cast. Lee Van Cleef, Jack Palance, and Sybil Danning. But behind the camera, pure disaster. The film was an Italian-Israeli co-production shot in Israel's Negev desert, where scorching 110 degrees Fahrenheit heat made filming brutal. Van Cleef even played 2 roles, a priest and his gunslinging twin brother, but he clashed bitterly with director Gianfranco Parolini. Things got so bad that Parolini reportedly walked off set, leaving parts of the movie cobbled together later by assistants. That's why the pacing feels uneven, almost stitched from different films. And here's the wildest fact. Jack Palance allegedly never read the full script. He improvised large chunks of dialogue, making his villain unpredictable both on-screen and off. If God's Gun showed how disorder can shape a film, the next entry pushes the spaghetti western into even stranger, bloodier territory. Next is number 8. Django meets Sartana. Imagine Batman meeting Superman in the Old West. That's what Italian audiences felt when Django and Sartana shared the same movie. Both characters were already cult icons in spaghetti western cinema. Django, first brought to life by Franco Nero in 1966, dragged his coffin of death through countless sequels and imitations, while Sartana, created by Gianni Garco, was a slick gambler gunslinger armed with trick weapons. But here's the twist. This 1970 crossover was not official. Neither Nero nor Garco starred in it. Instead, Tony Kendall and George Artisan took over the roles in a lower-budget production directed by Pasquale Squitieri. The film mixed revenge, bounty hunting, and betrayal, banking purely on the popularity of the names. It may not match the originals in Polish, but historically it shows how spaghetti westerns became almost like comic books. Heroes and anti-heroes swapping actors, merging into wild what-if scenarios, and producing over 600 Italian westerns between 1964 and 1978. And if this was spaghetti excess, wait until we dive into the Spikes Gang, where Hollywood veterans pass the torch to troubled youth. Coming up at number 7, The Spikes Gang. What happens when restless teenagers believe outlaw life is the answer? The Spikes Gang explores that question with brutal honesty. Directed by Richard Fleischer, it stars 3 young men, Gary Grimes, Ron Howard, and Charles Martin Smith, desperate to escape dead-end poverty. They fall under the wing of an aging outlaw, played by Lee Marvin, who teaches them the ways of the gun. But here's where history bites. The film mirrors the decline of the Old West itself. By the 1910s, the real frontier was closing, yet young men were still lured by dime novels and romantic tales of bandits like Jesse James. In truth, most outlaws didn't live long. Statistics show the average age of death for famous gunslingers was under 30. It's a rare Western where innocence is punished and legend is exposed as illusion. And speaking of illusions, the next entry, And God Said to Cain, dives into revenge as gothic horror cloaked in Western grit. Moving forward to number 6, And God Said to Cain. Imagine a Western that feels more like a nightmare than a shootout. That's And God Said to Cain, starring Klaus Kinski in one of his rare heroic roles. He plays Gary Hamilton, a man wrongly imprisoned who returns after 10 years to deliver cold, methodical revenge. But here's the twist. It doesn't unfold like a typical cowboy movie. Instead, the story plays out across one eerie night, with storms raging, bells tolling, and gunfire echoing through candlelit halls. Historians often call it one of the most gothic spaghetti westerns ever made. Why does this matter? Because it broke the mold. By 1970, most westerns leaned on dusty deserts and daytime duels. This film turned darkness itself into a weapon, a rare choice in Italian cinema. Critics later compared it to Edgar Allan Poe or classic German horror. And if you think this was bleak, wait until you hear about It Can Be Done Amigo, which blends revenge with comedy in the strangest way. Next on the list, number 5, It Can Be Done Amigo. What happens when a revenge western decides to be funny? It can be done. Amigo answers that in the strangest way. Instead of a grim lone rider, we get Bud Spencer and Jack Palance, two legends of Italian cinema, mixing slapstick with shootouts. Spencer plays Hiram, a giant with fists like hammers, while Palance plays a gunman bent on revenge. Their rivalry? Rooted in an old grudge that boils into comic chaos. But here's the twist. Most spaghetti westerns thrived on grit, blood, and betrayal. This film dared to inject humor into that formula, making it stand out in 1972 when the genre was already starting to fade. The movie also introduced Marzia Ubaldi as the aunt determined to arrange her nephew's marriage, blending family comedy with frontier violence. That odd mix made historians call it both a parody and a proper western. But if you thought humor lightened the West, wait until The Wind's Fierce drags us back into raw tragedy. Coming in at number 4, The Wind's Fierce. Imagine the Spanish Civil War reimagined through the lens of a spaghetti western. That's what The Wind's Fierce does. Starring Terence Hill, credited under his real name Mario Giraudy, the film blends politics, violence, and personal vendetta in a way few westerns dared. Set in Spain during the early 20th century, Hill's character finds himself torn between loyalty to his brother and his growing conscience about the bloodshed around him. This isn't just about shootouts. It's about family, honor, and survival. But here's the striking detail. Historians often point to this movie as one of the few westerns to openly echo Spain's painful political divisions of the 1930s, thinly veiled as frontier battles. Released in 1970 when the spaghetti western boom was slowing down, it still managed to grip audiences with stark moral questions. And the numbers speak. Terence Hill would go on to star in more than 20 westerns, but many critics highlight The Wind's Fierce as one of his most unusual and ambitious roles. But if betrayal here feels heavy, wait until Roy Colt and Winchester Jack shows how betrayal can turn downright absurd. At number 3, Roy Colt and Winchester Jack. What happens when a legendary director of crime thrillers decides to spoof the spaghetti western itself? That's Roy Colt and Winchester Jack, directed by Mario Bava. Yes, the same Bava who helped invent Italian horror. By 1970, the spaghetti western craze was cooling, so Bava flipped the genre upside down, turning gunslingers into clowns and duels into absurd theater. Instead of gritty revenge, this story follows two outlaws turned rivals hunting gold. They double-cross each other so often it feels like betrayal is the real main character. Critics called it chaotic, but that was the point. Bava wanted to parody the cliches audiences had seen dozens of times since Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy. But if absurdity defined this one, Clint Eastwood's High Plains Drifter took revenge to a chilling, almost supernatural level. And that's where we head next. Closing in at number 2, High Plains Drifter. Imagine a dusty frontier town where everyone hides secrets and a stranger rides in with eyes like judgment itself. That's Clint Eastwood's High Plains Drifter. Released after his Sergio Leone years, this was Eastwood's second film as director, and he shocked audiences by blending Western grit with almost supernatural revenge. The story? A mysterious drifter enters Lago, a corrupt mining town. The townsfolk beg him to protect them from outlaws, but he demands humiliation in return, painting the whole town red, literally, and renaming it Hell. Was he a hired gun, or the ghost of a murdered marshal back to torment them? Eastwood never gave a clear answer, and that ambiguity is why historians still debate it. Filmed on the shores of Mono Lake, California, the eerie landscape added to the ghostly mood. The sets, built from scratch, cost over $500,000, a fortune for 1973 Westerns. Critics compared the film to a morality play where greed, cowardice, and guilt collide under a gun barrel. But if High Plains Drifter feels like vengeance from beyond the grave, Eastwood's outlaw Josey Wales brought the Civil War and frontier survival crashing into reality. And finally, number 1, the outlaw Josey Wales. Picture this. The Civil War has ended, the South is in ruins, and one farmer loses everything in a brutal raid. That farmer is Josey Wales, played by Clint Eastwood, and his story turned into one of the greatest revenge westerns ever made. The movie follows Wales after Union guerrillas murder his wife and child. Refusing to surrender, he becomes an outlaw, hunted by both Union soldiers and bounty hunters. Instead of a simple shoot 'em up, the film dives deep into survival, loyalty, and building community on the run. Released in 1976, it was a massive hit, earning over $31 million on a $3.7 million budget, nearly 10 times its cost. Fun fact, the novel's author, Forrest Carter, was later revealed to be Asa Earl Carter, a former segregationist, a shocking twist that added controversy to the film's legacy. Yet Eastwood's adaptation turned it into a tale of reconciliation and resistance that still resonates. You've just seen the hidden side of Westerns, revenge, betrayal, and scandal etched into film history. If you love untold stories and movies Hollywood tried to bury, you'll want more. Explore our next videos and make sure you subscribe for the ride.